impression of all of you is that you've achieved some level of success in your life, that you have careers and education, that you're professionals. A client of mine would have called you fancy people. You see, this man was simple, uneducated. He was in way over his head. And after preparing him for a deposition, something that was very foreign to him but normal to me, he asked me if he could speak to me. This man was huge. He's a big man. Big African American and smart man, but simply raw intelligence that hadn't been educated. He was an imposing figure. And when he asked me if he could speak to me, he sort of stammered and stuttered, and I thought how ironic it was that this huge man was intimidated by me. And he said to me, "Ma'am, I didn't come up with fancy people." And I thought about that, and apparently he had been conditioned by poverty and prejudice all his life to be in the position that he was. And he asked me if I could be his bridge to professionals, to fancy people, assuming I was a fancy people. And I guess I can understand where he'd get that idea. I'm a lawyer. I have worked on projects as important as a family's livelihood and as unimportant as $1 million transactions between two companies. I have a nice corner office. I have somebody who answers my phone, somebody who types my letters. I have a great house in South Overland Park, a nice car, a cleaning lady. I suppose that looks kind of fancy. I was also a district director for a congressman at a time of great political consequence to him. There's only 435 congressmen, and it's pretty important to them who runs their offices at any given time, especially when they only win by 1 or 2% of the vote. And so for me, looking at the outside, I suppose my life looks pretty fancy. But you know, I could have ended up in a situation that's been termed the consequence of the soft bigotry of low expectations. Because in addition to my fancy life, I never graduated from high school, having never gone beyond the 10th grade. I am a former recipient of welfare, student aid, and food stamps. I'm a single mom. I was a victim of incest and domestic violence. And this is obviously emotional for me still today. I was seen as a likely failure. I was somebody that not much was expected from. Wow. In retrospect, folks were trying to be kind, but they told me that nobody in my family had ever gone to law school. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. Why would I expect that of myself? I had a middle school counselor tell me that I was not college material, and I should probably do trade school, if that. As a teenager, I had absolutely no business being responsible for another human life. None. But that little catalyst was given to me as somebody who would spur me into action. I was blessed by her. I had $5 an hour skills and another person to raise, to be responsible for. So I had to shake off the confined thinking of other people. I cannot tell you the dismay in the faces of the traditional Johnson County moms when I walked into kindergarten roundup at my tender age, and they had other children who were very close in age to being my peers. I can't tell you the terror I felt when my little girl came home and asked me what a direct object was. I don't know if you know how it feels to have a situation where you live next to a drug dealer in government housing and don't have choices, and so you organize a neighborhood watch. So I'm asked when I tell this story, how did that happen? How did I do that? Well, I picked an outcome, and I stayed focused. And I don't care what the obstacle was, I was not going to succumb to it. And I had a lot of help. Obviously, my government helped me. Obviously, my mother helped me. And when I developed meningitis in law school, during my accelerated program, there was a student who went around to all of my classes and tape recorded every single one of them for me. And he delivered it to my hospital room, and I was able to attend my lectures even though I wasn't there. And so, having officially arrived at the land of the fancy people, I guess what my message is today is that I appreciate your input, and I hope that you will teach me and allow me to develop into a better speaker that can communicate better and not get overcome by emotion. And I'd just like to thank you for your investment into my future.